Here today. And once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our Authors Network Worldwide. And thanks for being here today. And what I always see is that as a way of doing it, we see a lot of things happening with the Authors Network. And I've watched it very carefully and heard and understood and learned quite a bit in the process. And today that we have got 4 or 5 of the authors going to be showcased. And I saw a coincidence here today, and I saw that most of the people talking are basically from a global strategic point. We have Nelson, who's been a diplomat, a Mexican diplomat, and I will go more on that and about your book, Nelson, but good to see you. And Doug Bruhnke and Cesar, hi, Doug, hi. And we all know who Doug is, the founder and the CEO of Global Chamber with a vast amount of knowledge, having worked in DuPont and running a 525 metro network of Global Chamber. And Cesar, the vice president, who's been there, done that. He's always promoting and expanding the Global Chamber on a worldwide basis. And I've had the opportunity to closely work with Cesar and Jacqueline, something that I must congratulate you for, your philosophy of fearless leadership. And when we talk about, let's say, Mr. Pedersen, Mike, he's got the book, right? About, the book is about market domination. And I think somewhere what Jacqueline says and Mike says are connected, because you need to be fearless and you need to be able to market dominate. And we'll go further on that, how you build systems around it. And also Nelson has got, besides him being a diplomat, he's got a fantastic book in the pipeline where he's talking about immigrants, transgender, and how they navigate their way. And having been in the past 2 years during the pandemic, he has had almost an inner journey, but he's expressing it in his book of how one fits in into a country, how they will develop themselves in the process of looking at their status on a social basis. What are the challenges and all of them? But I leave it to Nelson to elaborate more on that. Finally, Doug, absolutely fantastic. The project, the program, and everything that you do. And to sum it up, global is good. And it's always been that way for me. And that's why I thought at some point when I met Doug, he kind of resonated. Something that I always thought that it's not just about local areas. We need to work on a global scale and find each other, resonate, find partnerships. And this book that Doug and Cesar has put together is something like what I understand is a collection of various experiences, various case studies that have happened globally. And when I think about it, there is no way by which one can understand this unless one has experienced it, sequentially put it together, and each one's story can be extracted to put the whole dynamics together, and we are on the way to doing that. Now, having said all this, I have a way to conduct today's meeting. That is, one question I have for all the authors today is, what was that defining moment? What was it that happened that the jigsaw puzzle came into through you? And I always think authors are actually messengers of some higher intelligence that they are articulating and giving it to the world, which is why we leave behind this heritage. So each one has a story. But my question today is, Jacqueline, how did you find this idea that fearlessness is the key to getting into something bigger and leadership, and how you can articulate your way? With fear, you can never achieve the kind of achievements CEOs achieve or anybody else achieves. So I will start this evening by having Jacqueline express the fundamentals of the logic behind your book, and how you got around to what was that defining moment that you turned everything around and started doing it. And we'll have another round where we'll have another question and we'll introduce each other again about the book. But having said that, I would like to begin today with Jacqueline's introduction.
Well, thank you, Shanker. Pleasure to be here. And, you know, I have a philosophy on being fearless, which is being fearless is not the absence of fear, but is the courage to take the next step. And that when we take the next step, that's when opportunities arise. So fear is a normal emotion. We all have it. It's the stories we tell ourselves, which is basically what fear really is, as opposed to physical fear. And I came to it primarily because I've had a lifetime of dealing with that particular emotion, and I felt I had something to say about it. So the defining moment for me in writing the book was really starting my coaching career. And as I was starting my coaching career, the emphasis was on, you know, where do you want to put the focus? And I realized there was an awful lot of fear behind people's thinking and behavior, and one of the reasons why people don't reach their potential. So given that that was the case, I thought, well, I've got a few things to say about that, having undergone my own journey along the way, many decades of dealing with it. And so that became the fearless factor. And that really was, you know, the primary piece for me. And of course, it's evolved into the Fearless Factor at Work, which was the second Fearless Factor book, because truly it's all about, you know, not just how do we handle our fears, but how do we define ourselves and how are we showing up in the world? And do we really know who we are, which is primary to the work that I do.
That's so beautifully articulated, what you just mentioned. I myself struggle at every point that one takes on something new. There is something about the fear of unknown. But like one famous person said, keep jumping into the unknown. That's the only way back home.
Yeah, I mean, that's very much a piece of, you know, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that is really the only way we change. So, you know, if we can get with that principle, get comfortable being uncomfortable, then we continue to stretch and we continue to see exactly what it is that we can do in the world. And all of us here, I'm pretty sure, are all change makers, people who want to make a difference in the world, people who are making a difference in the world. And we don't do that unless we get really uncomfortable pushing ourselves forward.
Fantastic, because I always learn from others. And when I was in college, I used to sit in the cafe and I used to tell my friends, this is the real library. Because when you meet others and you talk to them, you kind of learn things which you don't see in any of the books. And that's what is called the school of being, not the school of learning as in the intellectual process. So welcome to Jacqueline's world. And I turn to Cesar to say some things about how you came into, probably you found it, or you together with Doug found the book. And if you can say something, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Shanker, and pleasure to be here today as a speaker after too many calls behind the curtains. I think the moment it was, you know, just in a regular meeting with Doug. We meet every week, and he came up with the idea of the book. And it's not that I haven't thought about writing a book before, but something that's been always like in the future thing. Like, you know, once I retire, once I have more life business experience, I will definitely get there. But why not? Why not doing it now when I have some experience and I can be in a supportive, right? Having a co-author seems to be like the best way to start for me. So I think that was definitely the moment. And I will say, you know, when Doc came with the idea, I was like, oh my God, how do I start? But it was basically, and I think Doc would probably confirm that, but having this group with Gloria has been a key for us to really take the decision, and having in all the calls and listening to all the tips and the ideas on how you can sit down and write a book has been very helpful. So I would say that Doug and the group has been the trigger for this.
That's wonderful. I would I would say the same thing, because all along I was thinking writing and authorship is the same thing, but I realized that writers are writers. They can write well, but the author is the one with the logic, the original idea, that you can put these things together. So that gives me the courage to actually attempt to the book that I'm writing currently, that is about golf, business, and investments. It's a huge idea, but at the same time, I think that when people have a game to play with their co-workers or co-founders or co-creators, they can actually tune themselves in and make it even better, because two minds are better than one. And how do you do that? How do you bring fun and learning and money making all in one together? But no other than Doug can explain the phenomenon of having fun and learning together and growing on a worldwide basis. So I would turn to Doug to please elaborate on Global is Good.
Thank you, Shanker. Yeah, in terms of your original question, I would say there were probably three things that were instrumental for me. Number one was Gloria and these meetings that we've been having. There was one in particular that I was walking the dog in Palo Alto. And I remember Susan Schultz was on the call, and Jacqueline was on the call, and Dwayne, and the stories being told about how they had written the inspiration for their books and also how they had written it was just really the combination of walking in that neighborhood and Gus the dog. And it was like, wow, I've got to do something. So that was step number one. The second one was a fellow who's a member of Global Chamber in Denver, Barry Berman, who runs leadership courses. And so he offered to provide a leadership course for me this year, which I was very happy to go through. And he kept, there are a couple things, many things actually, that I took out of the course. One was around integrity and being better with integrity. And I'm working on that every day. And there's still progress to be made. But another one was to think bigger, think that you can pretty much impact anything that you want. And one of the quotes that really has driven me a lot recently was one I put on the bottom of my emails now from Lao Tzu, which is, when you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. And so many times we have excuses, right? It's never the right time. It's, there's somebody in my way. There's something that needs to happen for some action to occur. And really, that's not the case. We live such a short amount of time on this world, kind of building on what Cesar talked about. Why wait till you retire? You may not make it. The life is fickle. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. So let's do it now. Let's have our impact now. So Barry's leadership course was a key instrumental for me. And then I met Mike Pedersen and I read his book. Let's see, I guess it's not coming in because it's a yellow cover. Let's see if I move it back. There it is. Okay. I just have to be further away. And it's 200 pages of really outstanding information. And I figure, hey, if Mike Pedersen can do this and write such a brilliant book, I'm not as smart as him and I'm not as, extraordinary as him, but maybe I can kind of, some of that aura can rub off on us as well. So we're going to do our best. Thank you, Mike, for the inspiration.
You're welcome.
I'd like to thank you, Doug. Thank you so much. The bit about when you have nothing, but you can actually gain everything, you have that experience is so powerful that once in a while I get that feeling. It's what they call in Zen, the Satori moment, that there is nothing to accomplish from that standpoint to make money. But as I discovered Global Chamber, I found that I found true wealth. Money is just an exchange. It's just a matter of taking it forward. And Mike, I read about what Mike is saying. Mike says, if you got an idea, if you got a brilliant thought, I believe that brilliant thoughts are great, authors are great. And Mike seems to have put together a system to bring an idea into the real world. And I'm also going to read that book, Doug, what Mike has written, so that I can also kind of get into that space. And I believe that no matter how brilliant the idea is, it's one thing. an idea is definitely important. At the same time, it is form or framework acting on matter, which I call as our brain, is a kind of matter. It's a combination of fear and love and everything together. How do you put some kind of systems to it that you don't lose yourself out in the brilliance that you got, that you can bring it into the world in a systematic way? And I guess, this is my guess, what Mike is talking is about is putting next steps to an idea. And I would like to hear something from Mike and how he got inspired to bring this psychology into being.
Thank you, Shanker. And I will tell you, if you're writing a book on golf, then you definitely should go to my, if you want to improve your golf, go to my golf YouTube channel. It's about 14 years old now. One of the first forays, what I did was I launched the world's first golf fitness membership website back in 2001. And so I combined my passions of golf and fitness, put it together, and sold my products in 52 countries all over the world back then. But anyways, that's a whole nother story. But go, if you want to improve your golf swing, go to my YouTube channel. But
Mike, this is, I believe in coincidences. I didn't know that you had done so much work in golf, and I need to get in touch with you.
Yeah, for sure. Golf was a huge passion of mine for 20 years. But anyways, to not digress too much, what got me to write this book was I've written over 1,000 articles between, 1,000 pieces of content between articles and blog posts in the last 20 years online, over 1,000 of them. And I thought, wow, wait a minute, I've written a lot of content. And so I thought, why don't I have a book? I've written all this stuff, right? And, you know, it was funny because in English, in high school, I think my best grade I ever got was a C-, ever. And I would love to go back. Probably my English teachers are not alive anymore. I hope to think maybe they are, but I'd like for them to see what I've done now. Like, you know, look at me now, right? So, but again, my book isn't all about grammar. It's just raw, edgy. It's own your outcome. So what really got me to do this was previously I was a private fitness trainer. And I was a fitness trainer in the home of male CEOs, men, CEOs of you know, I guess in the scope of things, you'd call it small businesses, but you know, these men were worth $50 million, $80 million, $30 million, big, successful men locally. And I went into their homes and they were broken physically, they were broken emotionally, and even in their businesses. So what we saw on this exterior, like written up in newspapers, right? This big success, you go into their home and it's completely different. And as I was training these men, and I did that for about 12 years, and I transformed a lot of these guys' lives, right? From a health standpoint to a mindset standpoint. And then I got into the business world working with CEOs and their companies in marketing and business development. And what I found out was that I had this niche of I was attracting men. That was my vibe. It was because I'm so aggressive, I'm so intense that it attracted men. And so I owned it. So this book is written for everybody, but I would say it's more written for the alpha male, growth-driven man. That's because men, what I've come across is men are alone. A lot of these leaders feel alone. And I see it every day with clients I have calls with. They're overly stressed out. They've got to suck it up, right? They've got families, they've got responsibilities, but they've got nowhere to turn. They have nowhere, they feel alone. So this book was like, you're not alone, read it. It's all about mindset. So my whole entire, the gist of my book is right here. Every chapter circles right back to your mindset. If your mind is not right, you're going to have a very difficult time progressing in life. So that's what brought me to the book. The book really gave me clarity on what I offer the marketplace. And it is quite unique. It's combining sort of the personal health and well-being, the emotional, and then the business development all in one book. And that sort of encapsulates what I offer a CEO. That's the book kind of laid it all out right there.
You said it, Mike, because I too believe in three things. One is relationships, one is money, and one is health. If you got these three things going, relationships as in emotionally being content and fulfilled. And if these three things go well, you're quite balanced. I want to thank Gloria for always being there and encouraging that I'm able to moderate today. But I would think she's the senior moderator, and I would want her to say something on how it is all going, and am I going on the right direction? Is it going okay? And whatever your inputs today, please go ahead, Gloria.
Oh, I'm just tickled pink to see how well this is rolled out. I mean, we did 8 last summer. Last fall, we did a series of 8, and now we're coming to the close of 12 of them for this year. It can't work without all of you. It really can't. It's not me. I just had an idea. And I think that's probably the biggest message I can give you, because I'm really looking forward to hearing from Nelson here in a minute, is that if you have an idea, no matter how odd it might sound, you might think it sounds to other people, if it sounds good to you, if it's good to you, then you just go for it. You just get out there and do it and see what happens with it. And that's what this was. It was an idea. I thought, well, why not? A memorable moment with Doug was when I first presented this to Doug. He says, well, what's the ROI? What's the return on investment? What are the members going to get out of this? Well, my response, Doug, if you remember, was, well, I don't know. Let's just do it and find out. So sometimes you don't know that stuff ahead of time. Sometimes you just have to do it and then find out. Then you have your track record. So on that note, I'd like to send it back to Shanker, who I'm sure is going to introduce Nelson now.
You were able to do that very effectively, and it's, at the end of the day, we've really worked hard to focus in on inspiring people to write the next book, give them tips and techniques, and that's been very valuable. Shanker, just one bit of just kind of where we are. We're about halfway through and we haven't finished the first question, and then we don't have an opportunity. We ideally like to have a little bit of a conversation as well. So my recommendation is to move quicker and give people amount of time, just a minute or two, to answer questions and keep moving. You don't need to comment. You just keep moving it faster. So maybe we can get through 2 or 3 questions and open it up to at the end so we can finish up on time. What do you think about that?
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for aligning me back to the speed. And I will introduce Nelson quickly. And Nelson is a diplomat. He's a very interesting combination. He has bought and sold companies, and he's been there and done that. But actually, he brings in a certain twist to the whole process and articulated a book. And we would like to get a few points on the book, Nelson.
Thank you, Shanker. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Doug. Yes, like you mentioned, I had a very brief and diplomatic experience in immigration, where I got to see from a above ground experience what's going on between the flows of people coming from the south to our country here, and that inspired me to write this work of fiction. Like you said, it mixes 3 different characters, and one, the main character is a girl who was brought here as a small kid by her mother. Back then, she was a boy, and she realized here that she was a girl, and so all these changes between herself and her identity. She finds out that she doesn't belong in legal and social terms. So I use that story to try to express what I see is happening pretty much in our country, in America right now. And it has been a humbling experience because I've never written before, so I'm learning. And I'm almost through, I guess, and just looking to have my last edit and see if I can publish it.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you. We have come to the first round, and we will, go to the next one, where I think my question is, how did we reach to the place where we reached? Initially, I said about what got you thinking about writing a book, and what are the process. For somebody, it might have been a kind of a research. For somebody, it might have been a co-authorship, which is what I'm looking to. And for somebody else, it could be something else. You know, there are systems and there are so many other ways in Amazon. And if we can kind of go through that process, we can go back again, see how probably Mike would have some idea and we can jumpstart from there.
Okay, so can you clarify that question again real quick?
I'm saying that once you get an idea, how do you process it and take by step and reach to the place where you are today? Each one of us are in different stages. Somebody has written a book, somebody has not written a book, somebody has written 25 books. So there is something that happens in between an idea to the actual making it happen. So you are at some stage and you can probably tell us how you did that.
Yeah, I think it was just all the different areas that I work on with these CEOs. It just encapsulated. At one point, it just hit me. I was like, okay, well, I covered this, and I felt like it was unique. I felt like it was, it was unique. And so when I felt like I had this differentiating factor, that motivated me to take the step to kind of draw out my outline of the different chapters and kind of see if it looked powerful. Did it seem impacting? Did it feel powerful to me? Because for me, I wanted to feel like the book had energy. Like when people held it, it like literally had energy in it. And it was a very passionate thing for me to feel that, because I wanted people to not only feel the energy when they held it, but when they read it, I wanted them to reach out to me. I wanted them to get to the end of that thing and go, I got to meet this guy. So that was that strong kind of empowering feeling I had to put this thing together based on the elements I use when I work with somebody. That's how I did it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Jacqueline?
So for me, the process, the Fearless Factor was not my first book. It was my second one. I was trained as a novelist and had gone through a writer's program at UCLA. And so when I came to writing The Fearless Factor as a nonfiction book, it was an interesting piece because there's a lot of my own personal story in that book. But I also reached out to others who had experienced being fearless in their own lives and getting past some traumatic events or different ways of thinking about it. And so collecting these stories as well as telling my own story became the framework for The Fearless Factor. And I self-published all my books, and the reason for that was because I had control, because I could actually deal with all the aspects of it. And it was not an easy process, because it's basically like a publishing house. You've got to have your cover, you've got to have the layout, you've got to have it proofread, blah blah blah, goes on and on. So it is a big process to do a book. But I did mine through Amazon, through the KDP program. And I know that Indira has asked about how do you publish a book. And that's one avenue which you can explore. There's a whole lot of others, of course, and we've covered it in the author series over time. But my process is definitely, collection of stories and where do we go? And of course, it's always about, when you write a book, do you have a point of view? Do you have something that really has to be said? And are you unique in the way in which you can say it? And I like to say that a lot of what I talk about, there's a million other people who are talking about the same stuff. It's just about how I approach it, which is a slightly different point of view. So the process that you're asking about, writing the book is actually the easy part. It's the second hardest part of that is the marketing and making sure you get eyeballs on your book. And that becomes another big process in itself. But that would really be, if you're looking at how do you define the process and the idea, how do you get the ideas out there? That for me was what I was doing. But again, it's always that collection of, like Mike says, there's a collection of blog posts, there's a collection of articles that you've written, and one has to look to that body of work to see where you can find the through line that allows you to write a book on the topic.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And I will address this next one for Cesar and Doug too. I know the approach is different in your case because you're collating many articles at the same time. If you can say a bit on how it is being worked out, that'll shed some light for the others to follow.
Yeah, ours is a joint work, and so I think the way it seems to be evolving is each of us write in Google Docs actually, and then checking it. So we've had we're much earlier in the process than even Nelson in terms of pulling this together. So it's a work in progress, but it is going to be a team effort. And I would say, I was thinking about this after we met yesterday and talking about it. I think the key to this success is Cesar, actually, in the sense of he and I have found ways to work together, largely because he is very tolerant of me, because most people I work with, closely, eventually, like, tell me to go somewhere, right? And having that. And I think the evolution of this book will hopefully take us probably to the next level in our relationship, because I noticed when we were talking about the book, we were both kind of dancing around, ideas and topics. And, at some point we're going to kind of get right down to brass tacks and make disagreements on various things. And I think that's going to probably not just be good for the book, but be good for us in our relationship and moving that forward and moving Global Chamber forward as well. So to me, it's all coming together quite nicely. He could disagree, but I feel very positive about that, the interaction and the teamwork that's involved with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, I agree, Doug. We've been using a Google spreadsheet and I mean a Google document, and so we have an outline with some, and we're adding topics and ideas to that outline. But then separately, we are each writing about, I'll be covering something about a particular storyline, America, and Doug's going to be covering something and something else, and then we're going to be mixing it and exchange ideas on that. And on my side, I started also to write some stories for not related to, well, somehow related to the book, but not gonna be in the book, about personal things, my family past, and just as a way to practice, because I think everything in life is about practice. I played sport when I was younger, and practice is key. And so I haven't been writing anything for a while, other than emails and email introductions, and so it's been over 10 years since I finished college and all that. So I've been writing some things that you're probably going to be seeing around LinkedIn and all, but that as a practice to get into the mood and start writing even faster and better for the book.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we move on to Nelson, and how you had this idea and then how you articulated step by step. What are your key resources or access points to where you are today?
Well, like I said, it's my first try, so I've been learning through the process. The thing about the idea is it's very interesting. You hear about it and you read about it. You start with an idea of a story, and as you are writing, you find that you have a completely different story that you had in mind. So that's at least in fiction, that has been the case. And well, you just need to like Cesar said, you have discipline, find the time, and be consistent, and be humble, because it's very hard, at least for me. So I have to be patient, because you're used to or you want results right away, but it takes time. I started writing this 5 years ago, so it has taken me a lot of time. And but it's been a great process. It's been a great challenge for me internally, and hopefully I can see it published, and hopefully people I can share it with people very soon.
Sure, we look forward to it. And I would turn to Mike. Mike, of course, has got systems, but I'd like to learn from you, Mike.
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely, for me, systems, it's funny. I just had a very intense call with a client yesterday on systems, and he's at a very, very tough point in his business where it could almost be gone in the next couple of weeks. So it's very dire, and he just brought me on. So it's very, very, for me, it's frustrating. It's like, why did you wait this late, right? But when it comes to systems, this is a $16 million local business, 16 million. and they have no systems. Everybody's everywhere. And it's like, wow, you really see the damage that without systems, right? It's, you know, and I'm not the most organized. I'm a pretty somewhat reactive guy myself. I like to get in the trenches and just get after it. You know, I mean, if anybody reads my book, they'll know that. But you know, even at my stage of life, without systems, you don't have any consistency. You don't have anything to lean on. And with your employees and team members, nobody has anything. And then it goes into the accountability factor. Well, who's accountable? Who's responsible? Right? And so that I find very fascinating, you know, especially in the workforce, right? There's that phrase, that acronym RACI. I don't know if everybody knows RACI, right? Responsible, accountable, communicated, and then instructed. I think that's the last one. Google it, RACI, RACI. And that's a very impacting acronym for any business. And I would say the majority of businesses that I speak to do not implement RACI. They have no clue what anybody's doing. So for me, systems is very impactful, very, very.
Thank you. Kind of like building momentum.
Yep.
Thank you. And quickly, Doug, can I take a third question, or do you think we should go into discussions?
And any questions so far from anyone? And then if does anybody have any comments so far or any particular questions? And then if there's some time, then the third question would be fine.
Okay.
I see there's a few book writers in here. Joe Bockersteady is here, and Fernando Cordero is here, and certainly I think, again, does Charles Bernard, have you written a book yet? I think you have, right, or not?
I'm in the process of writing a book. Thank you, and it's a wonderful experience, and I'm really enjoying last minute joining. Shanker, you said something right at the very beginning about a heritage, and I didn't discover that until way into writing a book, and it suddenly dawned on me, I'm going to die, but my book will be around, so hopefully people will read it.
Hopefully not soon, though.
Hopefully not soon. And hopefully I'll publish the book before I die. So the question for me is, I'd love to hear what's been very instrumental to me has been getting an editor. And usually, at least I always thought you sort of get an editor after you've written the book or the first draft. That's not happened to me. I got an editor as I was writing the book, and he's been very instrumental in helping me change paths and directions a few times. But I'd love to hear what other people have to say about how an editor has influenced or impacted you, and why do you use an editor? And if you've chosen not to use an editor, why did you do that?
Great question. Can I take this one?
Yeah, please.
So I basically wait until I've done several drafts. My editor is my husband, actually, because he's a big nitpicker and he reads voraciously and he's pretty good. So I usually go through several drafts before I finally hand it off to a professional. And the professional's job for me, the editor on that side of things, is usually about catching the grammaticals, the inconsistencies, the transitions, all the things that we have to do and make in order for the book to be cohesive. To your point, Charles, you're actually using someone to oversee the writing of it. Now, I'll tell you, on my first book, which was a novel, I hired somebody called the story coach because I couldn't figure out whether this book was going to be a memoir, autobiographical, whatever it was, and eventually it became semi-fictional book. It had some family history in it as well as the storytelling. So hiring the story coach was a big deal for me because I wanted to get to the heart of the characters. And that became a really important process. And I, worked through it all, and I ended up writing a fantastic book, I have to say, but it wasn't that he wrote any of it. It was that he was writing my ass, frankly, to make sure that I was writing it from the most honest and transparent place I could. And ultimately, I ended up with a very well-written book. But that's the upside of using an editor like you were using at this point in time. But they are important, and they are important to catch it, because there's a lot that you don't see when you're writing stuff, and especially when you're doing several drafts of it, it's easy to miss. So you need editors. Yeah. Hope
Thank
that's
you.
Great. Yeah.
I had another question, and that was for Doug. Doug,
Could we get Michael
sorry.
to answer that one first, though?
Sure.
Yeah.
Michael, how did you use editors?
After I was done, I had a book writing
Okay.
coach that kind of took me through each chapter, because it was just so edgy and so raw and so very intense, but I wanted to keep it that way. And so when she did it, she's edited, or she's coached over 500 writers, I think, something like that. And she said my book was the edgiest book she's read or helped write, in the sense of like, well, she didn't write it, I wrote it. But so I had her first, and we went chapter by chapter, because I wanted to keep that intensity. So she was she would just look at my work, basically, right? I mean, I wrote it and she'd look at it. And then after that was done, I got this whole book done in 47 days. So I sort of like hyper speeded this thing. It was, yeah. Well, I had a book writing woman that I got on the phone, and I asked her, what the budget is, or she asked me the budget. She said $25,000, and I said, no, that's not going to happen, for her to help me with this, right? And then the second thing was, I was playing with her. She didn't know this. And I go, what kind of time frame? She said, oh, probably 9 months to 12 months. And I said, I'll get it done in 90 days. Take a look. And my last word was written on day 47. So, and then after that, I quickly got an editor, found a local editor, or here in the States anyways. And I highly recommend him, by the way. He's pretty good. So if anybody wants his resource, I can give it to you. He offers lots of book writing, book coaching, editing, formatting. His website is pretty cool. But so that's when I brought in the editor, when it was all done, like on day 48, after day 47 of finishing it. Day 48, I jumped on the editor, had him all set up, and he jumped in there.
That's terrific. Yes. Please go ahead, Doug.
Does that answer your question, Charles? Does that get you on the right?
Yes, that was very helpful. Thank you, guys.
And then really kind of the whole network has information. Gloria, for something like that, how best to give Charles and others kind of like should they be looking at any particular of the past events, or should they be talking with anyone, or are there editors that you would recommend?
My response is going to be to go to Global Chamber's YouTube channel, because we have covered all of this in a lot of detail, from authors and experts. Some of them are not necessarily authors, but they're the experts in helping you put your book together in detail. And it'd be hard for me to summarize what they've already shared in just a minute here. So I'm going to encourage you to do that. The other thing is, I do want to piggyback on something I said earlier when I commented that I told Doug that let's just do it and find out what the ROI is. But really, it all comes in one word. It's called two words, to inspire. So my whole purpose in trying to do this is to bring an author community together within the Global Chamber world, number one. Number two was for everyone to inspire everyone else, because I feel that if you feel inspired by an author, then as you read their book, it's going to be much more meaningful to you. And I want to say before I forget, is I am taking this very seriously. I'm lifting up some books here. I've read your books. I don't see, can you see them? Not so much. Well, anyway, not so. I've read this many of these authors' books already, okay? And I'm working on another one. I probably won't get to them, but my point in December when we come together is for those of you who have read another author's book because you were inspired through the series to read their book, I'm going to ask you to share that. And I'll give you an example. Jacqueline's books here, Dwayne's books here, Junko's books here. Well, there's a lot of them here. But one of the things that, since Jacqueline's on this call, one of the things I got from her book, certainly I know about the fear factor. I've been there, done that. I understand that, I get it. But the one thing in her book that I really picked up was when she defined the difference between an influencer and being influential, because there's a lot about being an influencer today in the language. And I really, Jacqueline, like the way you separated those two and defined them very carefully. So that's what I got out of yours. But I got something out of all the books. I hope I answered your question, but I'm going to defer to the YouTube channel. Doug, if you want to tell them how to find that, because it's there. It's there.
Okay, and I see Todd, I thought I saw Todd Cornell here as well. And I know, Gloria, I think you read his book as well, right?
I have.
Todd, what was your approach on editing? How yours was kind of a unique approach. Are you available to chat?
Hi, Doug. Thanks. Appreciate you noticing. I actually found an editor on Upwork, a girl in Canada. She related really well with my mindset. And I just worked with her, and she went through the whole thing and edited the book for me. And I was thrilled with the outcome, and felt like she did a great job. So I think she felt a little bit overwhelmed because I had never written a book before. And so she said, "Oh, I thought I was just going to be fixing the punctuation." And it turned out she actually sort of redid the whole book in a lot of ways, but I was really happy with it.
You know, what's really interesting for us, Doug, we have a book that is actually going to be coming out this December, and it's The Journey of Choices, Seed of Knowledge. And what we found out is that most of our time was spent with editors and then reformatting the book, because Word doesn't do it in publishing a book. But the editors, it was just very simple at the end. We actually had one in Macau that wants not only to publish the book, but make a movie out of it. And I'm not so sure I wanted to do that at this time in my life. But the book at the end has got the 13 rules of the game of life, which actually we are converting into a workshop program that we're running around the country globally. And so to find an editor is not difficult. But the editor today is no longer the editor it used to be about 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Editing company 20 years ago, they had a marketing department. Today, they don't have it. So you have to really think very carefully in terms of how you're going to publish your book, where you're going to publish, how you're going to reach your target market, what's your strategy, what's your marketing, what's your exposure. Those are things you have to think by yourself in these days. You can't expect an editor to do that for you necessarily.
So I think, is Michael still there? I saw the message. He might, I know he had sent a message earlier that he needs to leave. So Michael Pedersen in his book, Dominate Your Market, is definitely one to look at. It's 200 pages. It's very crisp and clean, and he's taken a really great approach. And what I really love about his approach is that he knows his target market. He sounds like he discovered it along the way he wrote it, and then he realized who really resonates with his writing technique, but also his overall kind of persona. So that's, I presume that's pretty important, Jacqueline. When you're writing a book, I presume you're writing it to someone, right? You know,
you always have to write it to someone. You can't write a book and not have a reader in mind, but it's not like you're going to write for the world, which is another mistake a lot of authors think about. You know, who are the hundreds of people who are going to read my book? Write to one person. Write to that person who really needs to hear what it is you have to say. And when you keep that in mind, it's also, you know, that's the important part for you too, is that it keeps you engaged. So write for that one person, and you'll turn something out that's worth reading, pretty much. So I'm looking forward to your book, Doug, and Cesar's book, to see what you guys are going to be talking about. It'll be great.
So are we. Sorry, Shanker, I jumped in there. Yeah. Back to you.
Of course, great. That gets me to think, what is your target audience, Doug? I think the whole world.
Well, you know, it can't be, right?
Can be.
But you know, I'm not sure we've been writing it to a person yet. You know, so I think that's something we need to work on. In Jacqueline, in your case, was there an actual particular person you were writing to, or is it a couple, like a persona?
It's you know what they call an avatar. You know, it's like when you're doing your branding stuff, or when you're thinking about your ideal client or your customer, I've worked with a great many highly accomplished women over my 17 years of coaching. And so I'm really addressing primarily women in my book, although my latest book was more geared towards mid-level managers who frankly didn't have a clue about who they were and how they were serving other people. So that book was written very clearly in mind as a virtual mentor to help at the manager level. But always, whenever I'm writing, I'm looking towards the individuals, professional individuals who are looking to grow. That's really what it comes down to.
That's interesting. We actually got the other side, Jacqueline. We actually wrote a book about 84,000 people who took our trainings. And so the book basically summarizes the learnings, like the comfort zone, how to handle fear, how to get into action, how to eliminate anxiety, and all those things. So it's really a compelling summary of society. And that's really my life legacy. I'll be 80 years old in October. So the question was, what in the heck do I leave behind when I go up there? And they ask me, what did you do? And I say, cold dog.
That's marvelous. And to have conducted that many trainings and get those kinds of understandings, not many of us have the great fortune to be able to do that. So
thank you, Jacqueline.
I love that.
Yeah. So Cesar, I think that's something we need to work on, because we're not writing it to the global tribe necessarily. I think they'll get it, what we're talking about. What we're trying to do is get the people in the middle, the people who don't get global and don't want global, they're part of God knows what. We're not writing this for MAGA Republicans, believe me. We're not, because they're hopeless. We're looking for people who are in the middle, who are open to the world, or have some kind of mentality that's somewhat, at least a little bit enlightened. And so we just want to open up another door to let them try something and see that it not just helps them in their business, but helps them in their life is really kind of where we're going. So we need to, I think, probably think about somebody specifically, probably nobody in this room because you'll all get it, but somebody else that's somewhere in the middle.
Well, Doug, there is something really interesting. I think you can make really a positive difference in the life of so many. Victoria and I, we just got a new Westie. It was really cute, and Victor was getting him a kid. So, but the kid is made in Lithuania. And this woman we contacted, they're all made by hands, in the middle of the war in Ukraine. And what's really interesting is she has no idea how to do business internationally. She says, well, I'd like to know more about it. And there's so many of these people in developing nations or new age nations, so to speak, that really need the assistance of people that have done it before, because it's not trivial. Just the change of currency. How do you change the credit card? How do you get paid? How do you ship? How do you insure it? All those things that even the middle person that you're addressing doesn't have a clue how to doing it. So you and Cesar, with your reach of 500 metropolitan areas in the globe, really have an incredible reach, and you can make a tremendous difference with your book. I'm really looking forward to reading it. I love it.
Well, Shanker, if it would just take one more minute on that, because I know you need to wrap up, but what we envision is a series of books for Global Chamber. So the problem we've seen with other books is they try to fit everything into one, and it's really hard, right? You've got all the intercultural, you got all the details. And there's one in particular that was important for me called Exporting by Laurel Delaney that I think is great, but it's so much. It's not, for the general people. So we see a series of books every 2 years where we kick it off, and then we'll include our executive directors along the way with different other aspects. So it becomes a series because it's hard to do everything in one book. Look look at the topics that Jacqueline covers, right? I mean, there's, I think Barry Berman told me there's like, what, 100,000 books on leadership, you know, and it's like, and these books keep coming out and they find, you know, a place for it. So global business, I think, can take more than just one or two books for sure. Jacqueline, how have you managed through that in terms of, you're in a crowded field, right? You've got it, and you touched on it, is carving out your specific area and to be able to tell your story is so critically important, and you've told it so well.
Well, thank you, Doug. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it is a crowded field. Leadership development, anything to do with leadership in general, you know, there's a lot of noise out there. So how do you rise above the noise? And that was why the fearless factor came about. You know, at the time there was a TV show called The Fear Factor, and had a lot of people who said to me, "Oh, you're that fear factor person." It was like, "No, I'm that fearless person." So, you know, we would kind of go from there. But again, you know, my book at the beginning, I would walk into a room and people would go, "You're that fearless woman." So there was an identification with the book that I wrote, and I'm still getting it to this day. So, you know, again, playing to the brand, playing to the niche, playing to what is the message that you really want to be giving to the world. And that happens to be mine. Yeah.
Pretty awesome. Shanker, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. Would you like to make the closing comments and kind of what you've heard here today, and any other words of inspiration?
I'm going to jump in because, Doug, you need to introduce October, the speakers for October.
Oh, okay. So who's going to be doing the introduction for October?
I put it in the chat. It's you.
Oh, why don't you go ahead? I haven't seen it. Sorry.
Okay. October 19th. We have Doug is going to be our moderator. Yeah, that's why you need to be looking at the chat.
I know the guy.
Because my voice just went a little bit. But we have Erica Herval, who's going to be one of our authors, if I said her name correctly. Alex, who's on this call, is going to be one of our authors there. And then I'm going to struggle with the pronunciation of the next name, so you might need to help me, Doug, is Christina Kohler-Kalushia. Is that correct?
Okay. She's an expert on China. She's amazing. Yep.
Yeah, and Dr. Vilma Treharth, we haven't had a confirmation yet, so that's kind of where we're at. Okay.
That sounds great. Looking forward to it. There's always some, interesting angles, and encourage you to attend. And since I'm moderating, I'll definitely work hard to, save time so we can have a conversation as well. Shanker, thank you for pulling us together. What observations do you have on today, and what would you like to share?
All I want to say is the different aspects of everybody's points of views and understanding and learning. It's like a compressed 1 hour university for authors. And I think each time I come, I learn more and more, and I'm looking forward for the October one. And thanks everybody for participating. And it has been very, very exciting for me because I've been the moderator and I enjoyed every bit of it, and hope to see you all soon. Anybody wants to make a parting message, please do go ahead and do it, and we'll close the evening.
I'd like to ask Nelson a question before we close, because I tried to look at every writer, and I'd like to ask you this, Shanker, as well, like one word or a short phrase that summarize. So for Michael, I think relentless. In his book, he talks about being relentless, which and then of course goes well, I think, with Jacqueline for fearless, but she may come up with a different word. Certainly Cesar and I are global. With Nelson, I was thinking progress or immigration or something was in there, and you can articulate it better. And then Shanker, we'd love to hear what you have to say. Nelson, what do you think?
Well, I want to title it American Dysphoria, which is the opposite of euphoria. So around that word, I think is that what I try to write about.
Okay, so what message or do you want people to take away? That
the country is changing, is in a moment of transition, and that it's not easy, but we will go through. We will move forward.
But is there going to be hope in there? Because when you're telling me that, I'm feeling like I'm not sure I want to read it because it's kind of depressing. I want to hear something that is ultimately uplifting.
It's not a cheering up a book. It tries to tell that we as a society put some people in more limited options that the rest of us have. But it's temporary, and we have moved forward from steps in our history before, and hopefully we will move from this.
So this is more of a warning. The book, you feel, is a
like a portrait of what are we doing to some communities that are part of this country.
Yeah, no, that's very powerful.
And it sounds to me like you're saying there's hope.
Yeah, there's always hope.
Yeah. And what about you, Shanker? What is it that you want to bring out in your book?
I wanted to bring out that don't forget play out of whatever you do, because to find a winning answer or to find big success, you turn to being playful in the beginning, because most people forget till the end of life that they forgot to play. They only try to do business and invest and do all kinds of things. So at every stage of life, one must bring in this ingredient. Child is the father of man.
Right.
Wisdom is nothing but a child's intelligence. So bring that angle to everything that you do.
No, that's great. Charles, do you have an idea of what you want to bring on? What's the overriding message that you want to bring in your book?
Yeah, so my book is about the relationship between buyers and sellers, and there's millions of books on how to improve selling and almost no books on how to improve buying. And so the book's about the relationship between the two. And Doug, what I find fascinating is that everyone I talk to says, oh, sales is all about relationships. And then when I ask people to define that, they can't. And it tends to devolve down to likability. Like, does the buyer like me as a seller? Like, I know their kids, I entertain them, I take them to lunch, dinners, we like each other, so we'll do business. My book's about a different word, not likability. It includes likability, but it's workability. In other words, my book is about what makes a buyer-seller relationship work. And that's really what I like to make sure I get across.
So often lost. Very powerful. Thank you. Cesar, what thoughts do you have? And I don't know whether Fernando is available to speak. Maybe but what would you like to finish with?
I think that our world is global, but also limitless came to mind. Limitless opportunities for people and for businesses. So I would add to that. And I want to thank Jacqueline and Mike. They both left, but I think their inputs were really, really great for what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve. And also thanks Charles, because of joining us today and asking the questions that are very important. So I will pass it back to Fernando. Fernando, it's a pleasure to see you here.
The pleasure, it's all mine. Thank you to invite me again, being with you. It's nice to see you again and to hear from you. And it's very interesting and very motivated for me to hear your task, your problems, to edit your books, your motivations. And obviously, it's always a kind of source of ideas and inspiring things. I did a lot of books to myself and a lot of exhibitions. In a certain way, Todd, it's a new inspiration because I'm a photographer. So I write with light, which is a very interesting way to transmit ideas. And my recent book, which it's already done, I'm just looking to have the money to print it. two kind of frames, obviously digital, the digital media and the traditional media offset. So in that sense, Todd, definitely one of the ideas that occurred to me in the way you present ideograms, Chinese ideograms are exactly that. My photographs attempt to be ideograms, which are, it's very interesting to understand when I shoot something, when I'm shooting ideas, my task is global problems in many senses. It's not necessarily people or one people or a specific public. I try to understand human problems that we are related on that because we're humans. So in that sense, I heard some very, very interesting ways to motivate and ways to understand life, which is for me one of my most important things, and to contribute that with that understanding to create things, to create, I'm absolutely agree with you, Doug, positive things and inspirational things, beauty in many things, in many ways. Thank you.
Wow, very powerful. Your photography has captured problems with pollution and with climate change, and so it's similar, right? Because in the sense of there's horrific things in the world, and we can curl up in a ball. And I had this conversation with my wife yesterday. She was going on and how hopeless that things seem to be. Why can't we get that guy in prison? Why can't justice occur? Well, guess what? Justice is never probably ever going to be occurring perfectly, right? Sustainability and the climate change will never be perfect. There's always going to be something. So how do you deal with that, right? How do you identify the problem like you do in your photography, but give people the inspiration to do something about it, right? To say, wow, I saw this picture. Maybe they can't even articulate it. I saw this picture and it impacted me so much. I'm going to do this. I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to vote. I'm going to do something. I'm going to take action, not to create perfection in the world, but to create a better world, to have a positive impact on people. Is that what you're saying?
In a certain way, yes. And one of the motivations are, if I ask your question, it's in many ways, it's an ethic problem that we're living now. Ethics is the universal language, and ethics is in your ADN. So listen to your heart, and there is the answer of many things that we're crossing now. Ethics, I think, is a major problem now because we're losing ethics, and we're losing many things that love, ethics, and moral, and so many things that we are losing because obviously it's a very deep problem because we're looking and searching just the money, the way we live, and we want to preserve the way we live. It's a normal thing. And the money in many ways is a big problem because we're capable to do very wrong things in order to have much more money or more success, viewing the success through the money, which is in many ways a big mistake.
Very, very powerful. Very powerful. So Nelson, keep telling your story. We're looking forward to the book. When is yours expected to come out? What is your time frame?
Well, I think I will have my final edits in a month, and after that, it's just finding an agent, a publisher, and somebody brave enough to publish it.
Okay, very good. Well, I think that brings us to the end. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Charles, for jumping in at the last minute. Thanks to all the speakers. Shanker, thank you for putting together this program and pulling us all together and asking some really great questions and keeping us on track. Everybody have a great rest of your Wednesday. And it's quite late there, Shanker, so enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you all. We'll see you soon. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.